My fiancé canceled our wedding in a rage. I went on the honeymoon alone and found peace from emotional abuse. We've been together for about 6 years now. We live together, and to the outside world, I guess we look like a typical couple, sharing a home, routines, holiday plans, inside jokes. People assume we have it figured out. But living inside a relationship is nothing like how it looks from the outside. And sometimes, the cracks are only visible to those standing in the middle of it. The day this happened was supposed to be a good day, my program graduation. It wasn't a huge university event, just a smaller ceremony for about 10 students and a few professors from my community college. But, to me, it was everything. I had worked so hard to get there, pushing through late nights, self-doubt, and moments where I truly didn't think I'd make it. It was personal. It mattered. That morning, as we were getting ready, I asked if he'd mind wearing one of his button-up shirts instead of the casual t-shirt he had on. I wanted a nice photo of us together, something I could look back on, just a small thing to mark a day that meant a lot to me. He instantly got annoyed. Snapped. Why do I always have to do things for other people? That caught me off guard. I told him gently that he didn't have to. I was only asking, not demanding. It was his choice. I even backed off quickly, because I didn't want to start the day off with tension. Eventually, he did change into the button-up and we left. At the ceremony, everything went smoothly. He smiled, clapped for me, looked genuinely happy. I was grateful for that. It felt like maybe we'd pushed through the rough start and made it out okay. But the drive home was when everything unraveled. Traffic started to build up, and I could sense his mood souring again. He gets tense easily in traffic, and I could feel it in the air between us, this quiet, simmering frustration. I offered a suggestion, an alternate route I knew that could cut some time off the trip. I'd taken it before. The exit came up quickly, and he didn't take it. I admit, I was a little irritated. Not because he didn't take my suggestion, but because he was clearly bothered by the traffic and still ignored a faster option. So I asked, "Why didn't you take it?" That's it. No attitude, no raised voice. Just a question. He exploded. Suddenly he was yelling, saying my tone was rude, that I always talk to him like that I don't respect him, and that he doesn't have to drive the way I tell him to. It spiraled so fast, I barely knew what to say. I was stunned. I told him I wasn't trying to control anything. I was just making a suggestion because he seemed annoyed. I said I really didn't care what route we took, but he was the one complaining about traffic. But he kept going. Kept blaming me. Said I'm the one who gets him upset. That I always make him explode. That it's my fault he reacts the way he does. That he yells, because that's the only way I listen. When we got home, I took a moment, then apologized. Not because I believed I was entirely in the wrong, but because I wanted to de-escalate. I told him I didn't mean to come off rude, and I acknowledged that maybe it came out differently than I intended. I also said yelling wasn't okay. That it doesn't help, and we need to talk instead of shouting at each other. His response? An apology doesn't fix anything. He said that unless things change, he's going to keep yelling. That he has to, because it's the only time I actually listen to him. That comment broke something in me. Not just because of what he said, but because I've heard versions of it before. Like the yelling and outbursts aren't the problem. My reaction to them is. Like it's on me to prevent his explosions by somehow always saying the perfect thing in the perfect tone. We cooled off after a few hours and talked again. He apologized for yelling, and I apologized again for how things played out. But it didn't feel resolved. Not really. There's a part of me still sitting in that car, still stunned by the way he reacted over something so small. I keep replaying it in my head, wondering, is this normal? Is this just stress? Or is it a pattern? Because it's not about traffic. It's not about a button-up shirt. It's about how quickly things go from calm to chaos. How often I feel like I'm walking on eggshells to avoid triggering a blow-up. And how often I end up apologizing just to keep the peace, even when I'm the one hurting. Even though we had resolved things after that initial blow-up, I couldn't stop crying that night. I was sitting alone in the bathroom, quietly, because I didn't want him to hear me. There was this deep ache inside me, not just from the argument but from what it revealed. He had yelled at me again, and it came so quickly, like a reflex. It didn't matter that it was my graduation day, a once-in-a-lifetime moment that I had worked hard for. It didn't matter that I was excited or that I just wanted a nice photo with him in a button-up shirt. Somehow, it all turned into a fight. And even though I kept telling myself it wasn't about the shirt or the traffic, the truth was, it was about how easily he could dismiss me, how quickly he could hurt me, even on a day that should have been about celebration. Yelling has always been a red flag for me. I've told him that. I grew up around too much yelling, too much chaos, and I made a promise to myself that I would never create that kind of environment in my adult life. I've worked so hard to be calm, to communicate kindly, to never raise my voice. But with him, it never feels safe when he's upset. He says hurtful things, he blames me, and then later, he either half apologizes or acts like I'm overreacting. It's always like I'm walking a tightrope. I never know what will set him off, but when it happens, it's always somehow my fault. The next morning, we sat down for breakfast and he noticed I was quiet. He asked me what was wrong, and I said I was just still processing what happened. I didn't even want to have a heavy conversation. I just wanted to be honest, to tell him that I was still hurting and needed time to let it settle. He said he wanted me to talk about it, so I opened up. I told him that I felt sad that our fight happened on such an important day, that it felt like he picked fights with me, and it cast a shadow over something I was really proud of. Instead of listening, he snapped again. He said I was the one who ruined the day, that I was a bad communicator, that he couldn't marry someone like me. And then, just like that, he started typing on his phone. I didn't understand what he was doing until I saw that he had sent a message to some of our wedding guests, saying the wedding was off. It felt surreal. We were sitting at our kitchen table, where we'd once talked about centerpieces and food and playlists, and now, he was canceling our wedding with a text. Just like that. No discussion, no pause, no grace. I asked him if this was really what he wanted, or if he was just angry. He said confidently, "Yes. I'm done." I was in shock. I didn't even cry right away, I just froze. I didn't know what to say. I thought it was another emotional reaction like so many times before, and that maybe we'd talk it out later. But when we came home that evening, I brought it up gently, asking again if we could slow down. "Can we just wait a day or two?" I said, just to be sure. He refused. He was firm, almost cold. He told me to start canceling the venue and the vendors. That it was over. That he couldn't be with someone who made him feel this way. I broke down. I begged. I cried. I tried to explain that I hadn't meant to fight, that I wasn't trying to ruin anything, that I was just trying to talk. I asked him if we could go to counseling, if we could take space and revisit things after some time. I even tried to own up to parts of the miscommunication, not because I believed it was entirely my fault, but because I was willing to do whatever I could to save us. But nothing worked. He wouldn't budge. So we canceled everything. The venue, the photographer, the florist. One by one, I made the calls and sent the emails. And with every click and confirmation, I felt my heart breaking a little more. Not just because the wedding was off, because of how little grace he gave, because of how easily he walked away. Now I'm sitting here, trying to make sense of it all. 6 years of love, of memories, of building a life. And it came undone in a weekend. A few bad conversations, a couple of emotional reactions, and suddenly, it's all gone. And I keep asking myself, was this the person I was going to marry? Did I miss the signs? Or did I just hope for too long that he would change? But the hardest question of all, the one I keep circling back to, is why I kept accepting this kind of love. Why I kept shrinking myself to keep the peace. Why I thought it was okay to be yelled at, dismissed, and blamed. The next day felt like a blur. I tried to keep myself busy, running errands, and then meeting up with a close friend. It was one of the hardest days I've had in a long time. I walked around feeling like I was in a daze, physically present but emotionally hollow. My mind kept replaying everything, over and over. The fights, the yelling, the canceled wedding, the way he said yes so quickly when I asked if he really wanted to end things. It was all too much to digest. And yet there I was, somehow still functioning, going through the motions while nursing a heartbreak I didn't know how to carry. When I got home later that evening, he was waiting for me. He looked different, deflated, broken. He asked if we could talk. His voice was shaky, and before he even got a full sentence out, he started crying. Not just tearing up, actual crying, like something had cracked open inside him. He told me he regretted everything he'd said and done in the last few days. That it was all a mistake. That he didn't mean it. That he was angry, overwhelmed, and not thinking clearly. That canceling our wedding wasn't what he really wanted, and he couldn't believe he'd let it get this far. He said he'd start therapy. That he wanted us to do couples counseling too, something I had suggested countless times before, only to be brushed off or told it wasn't necessary. But now, faced with the actual loss of our relationship, he was suddenly ready. He apologized again and again, asking if there was any way to fix what he had broken. He asked if there was a path forward, if we could mend things, or if, his words, he had fucked everything up for good. And I won't lie, Part of me expected this. Not because I'm cynical, but because this is a pattern. He pushes too far, says things in anger, does things he can't undo, and then comes the regret. The apology. The tears. The promises to change. And I guess, maybe I was cruel in that moment, but I looked him right in the eye and said, yeah, you fucked up big time. You made a rash decision that broke our relationship in a way I can't just unfeel. There's no going back from here. I meant it. Because even though he was crying and saying all the right things, I felt numb, detached, like a part of me had already closed the door. He begged for another chance, but all I could think about was the weight of what had already been lost. Our wedding was supposed to be in 2 days. 2 days. His aunt had planned to come over that very night to help us pack decorations and tie ribbons and sort place cards. The catering was already paid for. The seating chart finalized. My dress still in the garment bag hanging in the closet. All of it gone. All that time, effort, energy, love, just discarded like it didn't matter. How do you come back from that? I told him, as calmly as I could, that it's not just about the wedding being off. It's about trust. This wasn't the first time he's blown up, canceled plans, or threatened to walk away during a disagreement. This wasn't just a bad few days, it was a breaking point. And now that the wedding is canceled, what do we even go back to? Everyone around us keeps saying we can fix this. That clearly we love each other. That couples fight. That stress makes people act out. I hear it from friends, family, some even suggesting we still go through with it, maybe push the date back, try to rebuild. But I don't know how. I don't know how to pretend like this didn't happen. I don't know how to look at him and not see the version of him who was so quick to give up on me, who decided, without conversation, without pause, that I wasn't worth working through it with. That ending things was easier than taking a breath and trying to understand me. I'm exhausted. I'm heartbroken. And I don't trust him anymore. I don't trust that the next time life gets messy, he won't walk out again. I don't trust that when I'm vulnerable, he'll choose kindness over control. I don't trust that love alone will be enough to keep us safe. I didn't know what to do. Everything felt surreal. Our wedding was supposed to be 2 days away. Instead of packing for our honeymoon, I was sitting in our shared apartment surrounded by floral decorations and unopened RSVP cards, trying to make sense of the emotional wreckage we'd just endured. The honeymoon was booked, a quiet, beautiful island escape that I'd been dreaming about for months. Now, it was just another reminder of what we'd lost. When he asked if we could still go together, to fix things, I froze. The audacity. The timing. He said it as if we could just pack our bags, sip cocktails, and stitch together the hole he tore open. I wanted to scream. Instead, I told him I needed time to think. And I did think, deeply. I thought about everything. About how much I loved him, truly. About all the laughter and warmth we had shared. I thought about the cozy mornings, the quiet walks, the inside jokes. I thought about how, when things were good, they were really good. But then I thought about the shouting. The way he'd turn cold in the heat of a disagreement. The way my feelings would be dismissed or turned into accusations. The way, in his anger, he could destroy months of planning and years of trust in seconds. I decided to go on the honeymoon alone. That solo trip was one of the most painful and freeing experiences of my life. I cried so much those first few days. I wandered the beaches thinking about the life I almost committed to. But somewhere between journal entries and deep breaths under the sun, something started to shift. I started to feel myself again. I laughed with strangers. I ordered dinner without checking in with anyone. I danced barefoot to street music under stars. I remembered what it was like to be me without fear of being too much. Or not enough. And when I returned home, I knew there was no going back. He texted, called, said he was starting therapy, that he wanted to prove he'd changed, that he'd wait as long as it took. And maybe he meant it. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally cared about me more. A year passed. And now, I don't even recognize that version of myself from before. The girl who twisted herself into someone smaller just to avoid conflict. The girl who begged someone to stay instead of walking out the moment her peace was compromised. The moment I fully stepped back, I found her again. Me. The silly, confident, radiant version of myself that I hadn't seen in years. I celebrated my 31st birthday with a small group of close friends. I wore a bright red dress and danced until 2 a.m. And that night, surrounded by people who truly saw me, I felt reborn. Almost a year later, I'm somehow the happiest I've ever been. My entire life fell apart, and I struggled more than I ever imagined, But surprise, it all worked out. I met someone new, and it's unlike anything I've ever known. Peaceful.
Kind.
Grounded. Honestly, it took time to adjust to a relationship that wasn't a roller coaster. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never did. My ex? He feels like a past life. Like someone I once loved, and once lost, and ultimately outgrew. So if you're reading this, and you're where I once was, confused, heartbroken, stuck in a cycle of love and pain, please hear me when I say this. Leave the abusive relationship. Even if it doesn't seem bad enough. Even if there are good days. Even if you still love them. If you're constantly questioning your worth, your safety, your sanity, please walk away. Because you can rebuild. You will feel joy again. Life does get better, not just in the movies but for real. You just have to choose yourself.